foundation for your hormones is what? Fat. It's fat, right? All right. So when you look at fat, fat is the foundation for hormones. It's the foundation for how you think. Fat is the foundation for your digestive system. Fat is super, super, super important. All right? It just depends on what types of fat that you're eating. That will either make or break you. So nutrition is super, super important. It's not as important as your nerve system, because if you have a healthy functioning nerve system, it will make the best out of anything that you put inside the body, right? There's no question about it. So there's this saying that we always say that God needs no help, just no what? Interference. God doesn't need help in healing you, but he needs you to not interfere. So when you're trying to figure out with sickness, illness, and disease, is that you look at it and you say, is it just a stroke of bad luck? Is it just bad genes? What is it? Or am I created to be healthy and well, and that when I'm sick, it's not that something's wrong, it's that something has been interfered with. So over here, a medical doctor will say, you have high blood pressure, it was just supposed to happen. There's nothing that you can do, here's a medication to manage it. Versus over here, we say, no, your blood pressure is not supposed to be here, it's because you're interfering, the body is trying to adapt to it. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how you're interfering, remove the cause, and then let the body do what? Heal on its own. The reason why is because the greatest doctor in the world lives where? It's already inside of you. The intelligence that's there in the brain that created you from 2 cells into 76 trillion cells has always been there from birth, and it never leaves you. So when we're sick, what we have to say is how am I interfering? Where am I interfering, and what do I got to do to remove the interference to allow my body to express health on its own? Does that make sense? So nutrition plays a huge role in that. Because when you think about it, you have your nerve system, which is the master builder inside your body. You have to provide the master builder the raw materials in order to build the body. Just like the master builder of the house, you have to give them the right materials. So if you have a house with the best materials and you don't have a plan on how to build a house, pretty soon you're going to start hammering nails and boards together. And even though you got the best boards and nails and materials, you don't have a good house. So you have to have the master builder in control of all functioning and healing inside the house, and that comes through the nerve system. So everything that I'm going to be going over comes from the Maximized Metabolics books. You guys all have that? So this is the latest installment. So a Maximized Metabolics book is actually probably the most revolutionary book when it comes to nutrition, because when we were writing the book, we spoke to about 150 different PhDs and scientists on nutrition. If you look at nutrition, nutrition is probably one of the newest sciences out there, meaning it's only about 100 and 150 years of age, because like 200 years ago, we didn't even know there was vitamin C. Now we know the function of vitamin C. We know the function of vitamin D. We know the function of fats and hormones and protein, carbohydrates inside the body. So this right here is a fascinating read. If you don't have it, make sure you get it. There's 3 main changes what you do when you're revolutionary, when you're changing your diet, when you're doing a 180-degree turn when it comes to your nutrition. So the first one is obviously eliminating sugars, or anything that really turns to sugars, specifically simple sugars and simple carbohydrates. Number 3, you replace your conventional proteins with naturally raised and wild proteins. But what we're going to go over is how to remove bad fats and replace them with good ones. This is a pretty simple move. Now, if I tell people to get off of sugars, they roll their eyes and they're like, I can't. I'm addicted to sugar. I love my breads, pastas, rice, cereals. I love my sugary stuff. These 2 right here are actually really easy to do. It's really easy to change your proteins, and it's really easy to take out bad fats and add good fats actually in them. Really easy to do. So, what do Diet Coke, what do gummy bears, what do Pop-Tarts, and what do this lasagna, this boxed lasagna, what does that all, one thing that this all has in common is that all of these foods are what? Low fat. They're all low fat foods. So when you go to the grocery store and you see low fat, you see low fat. In fact, many of your gummy bears will say it's a low fat food. And guess what? Diet Coke is low fat too. There's absolutely no fat in it. And so this is, over the last 20 or 30 years, we have actually equated something that has low fat with healthy for you. Does anybody here think that any of these are actually healthy for you? So all the things that these have in common are that it's low fat, which even today people go to the grocery store and they think low fat equals healthy. The thing is though, if I ate a pound of gummy bears every single day and drank a 6-pack of Mountain Dew, I'm not consuming any fat, but guess what will happen to me? I will get fat from doing it. So here's the thing. So about 30 years ago, we started the whole low-fat craze, and really what they said is the standard American diet, they said, which was healthy for you, is low-fat, high-carbohydrate, and moderate to low protein. So they wanted all your calories to come from carbohydrates. So then we started to swear off all kind of fat because we thought that fat was causing heart disease and cancer and things like and other things, and it simply wasn't the case. So what we found is when we went to a low-fat diet, and this is at about 65% of your calories that are coming from carbohydrates, we saw that as we went to low-fat, everyone got fat as a result. Everyone started to put on weight. So this actually comes from the statistics from the Centers of Disease Control. And what they found is, in looking at some of this data, in fact, for some of these states, there was no data whatsoever because obesity was not a problem, wasn't an issue back in 1986, so they didn't keep statistics on it. So what they found is that if you look at light blue, these are under 10% of the population that has a BMI over 30. Now, BMI is not super accurate, but take 30 years ago when not too many people were actually weight training, a little bit more accurate. But basically what this is that the average of about 30 pounds overweight for a 5'4" person. So a person 5'4" being about 30 pounds overweight. Light blue is under 10%, and then a little bit darker blue is 10 to 14%. So this was in 1986, and then this was in 1987, this was in 1988, 1989, 1990. Now in 1991 they had 15 to 19% of the population, so now we have a new category with more people. This was in 1991, 1992, 1993, 1994, 1995, 1996. Now in 1997 there's a new one of over 20% of the population. 1998, 1999, 2000, now watch. Now we have 25% of the population in 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004. Now you have 30% in 2005, so you have new categories, and then finally in 2006. Interestingly enough, when you look at the healthiest state in the union is considered what? Colorado. What do people in Colorado do all the time? Hike, walk, bike, ski. They're always outside. They're doing things. And other things, too. That has nothing to do with it. So you see, when you look at this is the reason why they say that our generation of children will not outlive their parents. What they mean by that is that life expectancy now has reached 77, 78 years of age. They said that's really good. But the problem is now the average life expectancy of kids that are growing up now in high school, grade school, they say that their life expectancy is going to be anywhere from 69 to 70 years. And this is because of obesity. So what you see is because we've swore off fat and we think that healthy is high sugar and low fat, this is exactly what's going to happen. So the proof is in the statistics. If we don't change something about that, and if you don't change something about it, the story always stays the same. Is you have the same outcome when you do the same things over and over again. So think of this. I want you to write this down. Low fat always equals high sugar, which always equals inflammation. So low fat always equals high sugar, which equals high inflammation. So we're talking about inflammation, not the kind that like hurts. Although high inflammation in a person can make them hurt more, but what we're talking about is diseases that are caused by inflammation. So now that we swore off fat, we ate high sugar, do you see more people who have blood sugar problems and insulin problems and type 2 diabetes, right? Did you know that type 2 diabetes is an injury, it's not an illness? What I mean by that is that if you remove what's injuring the pancreas and what's injuring your hormone system, can you reverse type 2 diabetes? Absolutely. How quickly can you do it? You can do this in a matter of days, not in years or decades. We've had people in 6 weeks half their insulin dosages in 6 weeks. That's it. The other thing is accelerated aging. So if you want to look older, consume a lot of sugar. There's this thing in the body called advanced glycation end stages, or they call it ages. A lot of even doctors don't even know about this, but what happens in a high amount of sugar and a high amount of insulin, which is what takes in sugar and puts it into the cell, it's what insulin does. So high amounts of insulin causes accelerated aging, or these advanced glycation end stages, or ages. It actually causes the skin to look older. It makes the blood vessels damaged and the arteries become damaged, but it also even affects things like eyesight. So if someone is having cataract surgery and they think, I'm just old, it's not old, it's because of the presence of high amounts of sugar and insulin inside of the body that actually clouds the lens inside of the body. So it causes accelerated aging. So if you want to look younger, then your nutrition should be what? Higher fat and lower what? Sugar. Also, we already know obesity, but what about cancer and what about heart disease? High amounts of sugar cause inflammation, leading directly to cancer and leading to heart disease. Now, what's interesting is when you look at cancer, a cancer cell has 17 times more receptors for insulin. 17 times more, which means that really the main preferred fuel source for a cancer cell is what? Is sugar. So you want to grow cancer, feed it with sugar. Now, oncologists say, not true. You can eat whatever you want if you have cancer. And it's absolutely true. Because you can go to your oncologist and you can tell them, okay, so when you're going to do this PET scan to determine where the cancer is located, where it's spread to, then I don't want you to give me radioactive sugar. Because that's what they do in a PET scan. They give you radioactive sugar, and the sugar goes where first? To the cancer cells, and that's how they find where cancer is spread inside the body. So next time you tell your doctor, you can't give me that in order to determine where the cancer is, because it absolutely does make a difference in the not only the formation, but how you're going to help someone overcome their cancer. So if you look at the food pyramid, what you should do is you take the food pyramid that they teach, and you should turn it upside down. Because if you turn it upside down, it would actually be way, way more accurate. So the standard American diet is about 65% or so carbohydrates, or 60% of what they recommend, which leaves about 20% or 15% for fat, and 25% for protein. So when you look at this is the standard American diet, and now you look at the incidence of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, you see it exploding, going through the roof. We haven't even touched the surface of how bad it's actually going to be, but this is from the standard American diet. Now, if you look at like the fat diet, this is actually for someone to promote just normal activity and health. So the fat diet, actually 50% of your daily calories, now write this down, 50% of your daily calories should come from what? From fat. And the other 25% should come from carbs, and then the other 25% should come from quality proteins. Now the carbs that you're eating should come from quality carbs. We're not talking about crackers, we're not talking about bread. We're talking about high quality sources of carbohydrates, which are going to come mostly in vegetables and some limited fruit. Those are your best sources of carbohydrates. Now, if someone has cancer, I'm going to talk about this in a second, but if someone has cancer, they automatically go to what's called a ketogenic diet. Have you guys ever heard of a ketogenic diet?
Yes.
Yes. So it's called ketosis. You know what ketone bodies are? So when you deprive your body of carbohydrates, the breakdown of fats inside of your system produce ketones. Your brain can run on two things, glucose, and it can run on what? Ketone bodies. So people say, I need sugar or else my brain is going to shut down. Because remember, my doctor says brain runs on glucose. Now, how many people have deprived themselves of sugar? How many people have died and their brain has gone dead? No, because they go into ketosis, which their brain derives their energy source very efficiently from what's called ketone bodies. So if someone has cancer, guess what percentage of their daily calories should come from fat? About 70%. About 25% comes from proteins, and only 5% comes from carbohydrates. Why, when you do that, why does a person's cancer start to diminish and their tumor markers start to go down? Why is that? Because essentially, what are you doing? You're starving the cancer cells and you're depriving it from its fuel source. Let me show you why fat is so important in your diet and in your nutrition. Here's why it's so important. If you understand this right here, I'm not going to take you back to biology, but if you understand this, you'll understand why fat is so critical in helping a person overcome cancer, heart disease, but also with their hormone system, and in addition, helping their body to detoxify. Now watch, you guys know what this is right here? Anybody have any idea what this is? It's a membrane. It's the membrane on the outside of the cell. How many cells do you have in your body? We really don't know. It's about the size of the American debt. 76 trillion? So they estimate anywhere from 60 to 76 trillion cells you have inside of your body. You know what's also interesting is you actually have more gut bacteria than regular cells inside your body, which means your digestive system is important too. Now watch. So all of these cells, we always say you're only as healthy as your cells. So if you looked under a microscope and looked at those 76 trillion cells, most people think, now pay attention, most people think that the brain of the cell is what? The nucleus. What's inside of the nucleus? The DNA. So we think that's the brain of the cell. But in reality, the brain of the cell is the outer portion of it called the membrane. Here's the reason why. Your membrane is what allows good things to come in, and it allows bad things to do what? Go out. So the membrane is what's responsible. It's the gatekeeper on what gets to come in and what gets to go out. Now, what you see is you see some proteins. These are what allow certain things on. You have these receptor sites, and you have these protein channels, and when you have hormones that attach to it, it opens up the channels and allows things to go in, or it actually starts a mechanism producing hormones inside of the cell. But when you look at this lipid bilayer, remember what's a lipid? It's a fat. This is the outside of the cell. Bilayer means there's two layers, the outside of the cell and the inside of the cell. And that is made up of fat. So here's the thing. What would happen if you are depriving your body of fat? What's happening to the membrane of the cell? It gets sick, or it can't regenerate itself. Now here's the other thing. What happens if you consume a lot of fat, but a lot of damaging fat? What does it do? What it does is it sticks to the outside of the cell and creates what's called cellular congestion. What that means is once you have damaging fats and they're sticking on the outside of the cell, now a super important thing happens. You can't get good things to do what? Go in, and you also cannot have bad things do what? Go out. So it creates a congested cell. You get enough congested cells, you deprive the cells of oxygenation, you deprive the cell of detoxification, you do that to a cell long enough, and what does the cell have to do? It has to die or adapt and turn into what? A cancer cell. Because a cancer cell is an adapted cell. When the environment is bad enough with it, the only way for a cell to survive is to turn cancerous, because it can survive in this non-oxygenated, damaging environment. So, now you know why fats are so important for all of the production of hormones, detoxification, and cellular healing, right? All right. So healthy fat is essential. Not any fat, but healthy fat. So think of it. When you have healthy fat, it builds a healthy cell membrane, which is critical for detoxification. A lot of people say, Dr. Nate, should I take this daily detox? And I say, yes, but you should also make sure that you're consuming what in order to rebuild the cell membrane and make sure things can go in and out? Enough fats. Number two, it absorbs vitamins. So if you don't get healthy fats, then you don't absorb fat-soluble vitamins. And what are they? Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. Now, this is important for the absorption of vitamin D too. So if you aren't getting enough fat, then vitamin D is not going to get absorbed very well. If you don't have enough fat in your diet, vitamin D is not going to be made very well inside your body, nor is cholesterol, which you need. It's the foundation for your hormones. Now, name one hormone out there that doesn't rely on fat. Name one. There isn't one. They all rely on fat. So if you look at the chemical makeup of hormones, it revolves around fat and it revolves around cholesterol. Healthy fat actually lowers inflammation. So healthy fat will decrease blood pressure. Healthy fat will decrease pain. Healthy fat will decrease type 2 diabetes. And then it also makes up as much as 70% of your brain tissue. So if you want to think well, you want to sleep well, you want to remember well, guess what you need? A lot of healthy fat. And in fact, if you look at Alzheimer's patients and things like that, we have people that are suffering with memory loss, dementia, things like that. One of the first things we tell them to do is go home and take about 2 tablespoons of raw coconut oil every single day, because that actually lowers inflammation inside of the brain. So fat's pretty important. Yes or yes? Yep. Absolutely, all right? So here's the bad stuff. Now, if you've been a patient here for a while, you're going to be pretty familiar with this, but if you've only been a patient here for a couple of weeks, then you absolutely got to write this down. Here's the bad stuff. This is what you want to remove from your nutrition right now. Anything when you see is hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, you get rid of it. So hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, the reason why this is in so many packaged foods is because if they don't hydrogenate or partially hydrogenate the oils, guess what it does at room temperature? It melts. So you would have a package of dripping food. So at room temperature, when you hydrogenate it, the fat in it doesn't melt. So it can stay solid at a room temperature. So this is things like cottonseed oil, soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil, or those simply labeled vegetable oil. So there's 2 kinds of fats. Anything that's been hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, number 1, or number 2. The other one is anything that's just simply labeled oil. Specifically vegetable oil. It says, hey, we only have 3 ingredients. We have corn, salt, and vegetable oil. Well, those fats can't withstand heating, and they're all heated, so they turn rancid, which also becomes a damaging fat. So this is found, where do I find this, Dr. Nate? Bread, crackers, cookies, pretty much any kind of boxed food, you will see these kind of either rancid fats or hydrogenated oils. Now, what about trans fats? So these are fallen out of favor quite a bit. But, in the 1940s or 1950s, there's something that got absolutely demonized. And what food is it? What was it? Yeah, it was butter. So butter was demonized because there was a guy that came out, 1950s, 1960s, that said, butter is high in saturated fat, and saturated fat causes heart disease. Well, he was actually true, it was right, but he was also wrong, because the only type of saturated fat that he studied was any kind of saturated fat that had been altered by man. So when you look at any kind of saturated fat that is naturally occurring in nature, it will never give you heart disease. So what are some unaltered sources of saturated fat? Yeah, meat, when it is completely grass-fed. Coconut oil is high in saturated fat. You know what's cool about coconut oil? Is that coconut oil is never stored as fat. It is immediately used as an energy source called medium-chain triglycerides. They can be used as an energy source. That's what's really, really cool about coconut oil. So instead, what we did is we used these trans fats, which are margarines, synthetic butters. I can't believe it's not butter. You know all those ones? And in fact, those things are trans fats. Those have their own death category. You eat it and it clogs the artery right away. What's interesting, if you look at butter, what color is margarine? No, it's gray. So what did they do? Because no one would want to eat it, is they put coloring and they colored it yellow. And in fact, a long time ago, 40 or 50 years ago, the margarine came with its own coloring packet. Now they said, well, let's not do that, let's just make it yellow to begin with. So margarine, if you look at it, is basically a couple molecules away from just being plastic. Yeah, we are eating that every single day. So Let's take lessons from the ant. We can learn a lot from the ant. All right, so you got a couple of ants that are a little bit off. He'll probably change his mind pretty quickly. So when you look at this, this is butter, and over here this is margarine. So out of you got a couple of ants that they're gonna find their death. In fact, these two up here I think are already dead. They just died right away. That was their fault. They had the choice to choose butter. But what does the ant actually choose? Yeah. So it's just their innate intelligence that chooses something that is closest to how it was created versus something that's been chemically altered and manipulated. So take a lesson from the ant and choose what? Butter over margarine, right? Now, cooking with oil. This is something that you can get into a lot of trouble with, a lot of problems with. So this is what's acceptable for heat. This is the absolute best, is coconut oil. Why is that? Because coconut oil can withstand what? High temperatures. So you don't cook with Crisco, you cook with coconut oil. If you were going to fry something, and it's okay to fry something if it's in coconut oil, you grease the pan with coconut oil. Coconut oil is the acid. You can never go wrong by heating something at high heat, and coconut oil can withstand the temperatures. It will not turn rancid. You also have grapeseed oil. You have olive oil. For these two, you should only do at medium heat, so not at high heat. As soon as you have that start to smoke, throw it out because it's turned rancid. This is what's really cool. How many of you got your metabolics testing done? So a couple of people have done, and I know that we have a couple people, at least we had probably 60 or 70 people who have actually gotten their metabolics testing done. The cool thing is you can actually know like your fat ratios just by doing a pinprick test. And so what it measures is how many omega-3s you have, your omega-6s, your trans fatty acids. So when you're eating trans fats, it will actually show up. But then it also looks at your ratios. What's really important is having a right ratio of omega-3 fatty acids inside your diet, or inside of your body. This is actually a 19-year-old girl that came in. She had rheumatoid arthritis. So from the time that she was 15 years of chronic rheumatoid arthritis. Just by adjusting her and correcting her nerve system, she came in. She was in today, and I said, Tia, how many meds were you on when you started? She was on 15 meds. Can you imagine that? 15 meds by the time she was 12 years of age. And I said, how many are you on now? She says, none. I don't take any. We got her to a certain point by correcting her nerve system, but she was also really nutrient deficient as well. So you can tell this is hers by looking at it. What is she extremely low on? Her omega-3 fatty acids. I mean, she was absolutely tanked on it. And she still had a lot of chronic joint pain and things like that. And so you can see her omega-6s are fine. Her trans fatty acids are a little bit high. You can still, by looking at this, how does she eat? Probably a lot of what? Boxed, packaged foods that aren't very good for her. But she's in college, so when I was in college, I went to Burger King every night. So I'll be completely honest with you, it was horrible. Yeah. But you look at her ratios, is that her ratios, she's showing high amount of inflammation, but she's showing an almost non-existent ratio of omega-3 fatty acids. So when this happens right in through there, you know what that promotes? That promotes what? Inflammation inside of the body. Now, when we retested her again in 3 months, all of these went away. Except she was taking 6 grams of fish oil every single day. 6 grams. Most people that we've had have only taken 1.5, maybe to 3 grams at the most. She had to take 6 grams every single day in order to get her ratios obviously back under control. And now she actually just supplements with about 1,500 milligrams of omega-3s every single day and with the optimal omega. All right? Now what about red meat? Does red meat cause cancer? No, it doesn't. How many of you have heard of red meat causes cancer? That it causes colon cancer, it causes heart disease, things like that? It's an absolute myth. So fat and meat causes heart disease, cancer, osteoporosis, and kidney disease. And it doesn't. The truth is that the improper fat ratios in conventional beef cause the disease. So it's not the fact that it's the red meat, it's what the red meat had eaten that caused it to be damaging to you. Now, conventionally raised meat, what are they fed? Let's say we have a cow. What is a conventionally raised cow? What's its staple diet? It's corn and it's grain. So the problem is that it consumes a lot of grain, which if you want to fatten up a person, you give them a lot of what? Grains. If a farmer wants to fatten up a cow, they feed them grain, the same exact thing. So then what happens is it shifts them over from being omega-6 dominant and hardly any omega-3s. Remember, if your ratios are off, you're going to produce inflammation inside the body, which leads to heart disease. So you're not what you eat, you are what they ate. That is what you are. So saturated fat is important at the cellular level. Remember we talked about it, it doesn't cause heart disease, it helps prevent it. So when you're consuming saturated fat from coconut oil or saturated fat from grass-fed sources, that's actually very, very, very good for you. And you can eat that without having any problems of heart disease or high blood pressure or high cholesterol. In fact, when you look at it, you should have your diet and nutrition should be consuming, you should be consuming a lot of grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, free-range eggs. Why free-range? Because if they eat the bugs and the seeds, they're going to be higher in omega-3 fatty acids than if they're stuck in a cage and fed what? Grains. So free-range eggs, and in fact, if you crack open an egg, a free-range egg versus a caged egg, and you'll see the difference in the color, and the brighter the color, the more healthier fats are going to be, especially in the yolk. Now, what about dairy? So, you notice they said, what's healthy? What's the healthiest form of dairy? Yeah, fat-free skim milk. So they take the milk, they skim off all the fat, and what do they leave? They leave the sugar. So all it is milk, sugar, and water that's in it. So if you want to have a person gain a lot of weight, have them have fat-free or skim milk. So if you're going to consume dairy, preferably it should be raw. The reason why is that once you pasteurize milk and homogenize it, you break down the usable proteins in it. Now, the best would be full fat and raw dairy, which is really hard to get. The reason why you have to find a local farmer that only has grass-fed cows, and that's really, really hard, but that's going to be the dairy that's going to be the best for you, by far. At a minimum, you should have organic, full-fat milk. Organic, full-fat milk, all right?